Welcome to another exciting episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. We have the honor of hosting Chris Lunney. He's a managing partner of Grey Crown Development Services. So, after 25 years in the military and 4 overseas developments, Chris has learned how to lead under fire. Now he leads with precision in the unpredictable world of property development, tackling Canada's affording housing crisis with tactical clarity and a bulletproof due diligence process most developers overlook. How you doing today, Chris?
Good, Derek. Thanks for inviting me on. Looking forward to helping you explore some new material and anything we could do for your network and client base. That'd be great.
Definitely, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a unique perspective. A lot of our content is geared towards the general contractor, but of course, development is such an integral part of that, the relationship there, but also a lot of general contractors who I've had clients, they want to get into some spec homes or do a little bit of development, stuff like that. So I'm sure it'll be very interesting with your knowledge and expertise, and then your background in the military gives it a very unique perspective there. So can you share a bit about your background and your story and how things sort of unfolded to where you are now?
Yeah, I've had actually, I was just speaking this morning to a group we were working with here in the Edmonton, Alberta region on a major project and just sharing how we look at things from our military background. For 25 years, I've been getting a group of people I've hadn't met in the morning around a table in the afternoon and solving problems by, midnight. So, working collaboratively, working creatively, and just focused on solving problems. Very similar to how a lot of the builders have to do their work on a day-to-day basis. You come for the tailgate briefing, only to find out that your plan has got to change, and just being dynamic, creative, solve the problems, move the project forward, stay on budget, stay on timeline. So the only difference is, I jokingly say, is in property development, no one shoots at us on a day-to-day basis unless they're really pissed off, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, definitely a plus, I guess, to property development over, being whatever, armed
Yeah.
conflict. So how was that transition for you from, military into the development world? How did that come about? And how did you maybe need to change your mode or learn new things? What was that transition like?
So I have a really great story from when I was growing up. My dad was a middle manager, built every house we ever lived in. Was that guy from that generation that, hey, I can do this. So he was the one that, rented the excavator, dug the hole himself, got experts to come in to help him on the spots that he wasn't sure of, but he was still throwing, helping to pour cement, put in every nail he ever, in every house we ever lived in. So I saw that as a very young age, and that was a spark for me to build. I was always creative, Legos, and it really kind of sparked me because what's really interesting, and I'll take a quick kind of divergence. In the military, we grow amazing teams. So I was in the Army, and we gather in, like I said, a whole bunch of very unique individuals with unique skill sets. And over some very, very difficult training, we build cohesion, we build teamwork, and then we go off and do operations, at home, abroad, training events, etc. And the difference is when you get back from that, at some point, everybody goes away. So the team is always evolving and changing. It's like trying to capture smoke. But what a lot of your network will understand is when you build something, it's there, it's permanent. So when I finished my time in the military, having built all these great teams that I'd helped mold in some way the individuals, the teamwork, and they had made a huge impact on me. I needed to get to that next level, which was I need to build something permanent that I can look back on and go, yeah, that's something that I did. And so every time I've been posted to new locations across Canada and around the world, I built a deck, or finished the basement, or added value to a house that was good for me and my family in that moment, but as well then for the next families that came in thereafter. So I did that for me. But now when I finished the military, all those skills of leadership, how to plan, how to organize, how to execute, they don't go away. How do you bring people together to make something great? And that just that's I'm not saying that's the skill sets I have, but those are the things that I've been trained at, and I'm not to my own horn, but that is something that was inherent to me. So it was a natural to get into property development because all those skills are critically important. And the only other thing I'll give you is sometimes property development is more stressful than combat, because even in combat, you have a gun, you can shoot back. In property development, sometimes those things you just have to Oh, there's a lot of sleepless nights, and I know there's a lot of your clientele and network that understands exactly what I just said. It's the anxiety of the unknown, and when shit happens, you've got to just adjust and change. Which sorry about that, but you understand the point.
Yeah, I like how you articulated, that fulfillment that you get from building something permanent and working with your hands and finishing something. I think that's where many builders, developers, they come from that background, whether you're, building houses or developments or, a business or a team or whatever, to be able to have, put your own touch on it and have that fulfillment. And then, the stressful nights, everyone in construction and development knows how that works. And you're dealing with so many different actors, from government to permitting to clients to tenants or whatever it may be, and everyone's got their own ideas and opinions of how things should go, and of course nothing ever goes quite to plan, and that's where got to be quick on your feet and things like that. So as far as like the acquisition of land, because that's something that's like very inherent to property development, is finding the right land. How do you approach that? What are maybe some mistakes that you've made or you've seen made to find that first kind of building plot that you need to get a project into imagination, I guess?
Yeah, Derek, that is from a property development perspective, that is the most crucial piece to really understand and unlock. I'm going to tell you how we pick dirt, how we choose municipalities in which we want to work. And I capture this story and I'll go through it, but I'll summarize it right up at the front by saying I spoke to a gentleman who'd done property development here in Canada for 30 years. He'd done over $1 billion worth of developments from single family residential all the way up to multifamily high rise. And he said, after speaking to me for 5 minutes, he goes, if I knew what you just told me 30 years ago, I would have probably built over $3 billion worth of development, because you just captured in 5 minutes what I should have realized it took me 30 years to figure out. So how many times have we've seen The Matrix, and you understand the girl in the red dress. Everybody falls in love with the girl in the red dress, and that is you talk to anybody and they say, I just drove past the most beautiful piece of land that you've ever imagined. It's a corner lot. It's 15 to 25,000 square feet, and I can put a Taj Mahal up like you wouldn't believe. And from our experience, I can go by and look at that within 15 minutes and a little bit of research online, go, there's no way in hell you're ever going to build anything on that site except, a 2-story walk up, maybe an eightplex in there. So I'll tell you how we look at dirt. So we don't ever fall in love with land. And that's a military axiom, is you never fall in love with the ground, because the enemy has a vote and you'll always be wrong. So first and foremost, we do market analysis. It's like saying the sky is blue. Everybody does market analysis, and you should. And there's all those natural things. So what are the economic drivers? Is the community growing? Where's the growth? Are we situated in the right spot? What is the zoning? So really elementary stuff that everybody understands. But there are 3 other pillars that we focus on, that the second one, not really anybody looks at. The last 2, no one even considers. So we look at municipalities, and the second pillar that we look at is an official community plan. And whether you're in the States or in Canada, that could be a municipal development plan. It has any number of names, but it's the long-term vision of the municipality that says, we are here and we want our community to be here in 25 years. And they'll outline where their economic corridors are, where their transportation hubs are, where they want their development, and where they see their community growing. It'll also outline your zoning, your deep infrastructure, and a myriad of other bylaws and not rules and regulations, but guidelines for growth. No one looks at that. And trust me, Derek, if you've ever read one and you're an insomniac, please, within 5 minutes, you'll have it on your face, and you'll be sleeping like a baby for 8 hours. But everybody needs to read these documents, because if you don't know where your community is trying to go, how can you support them getting there? And that's ultimately, we take a collaborative approach to this. So once we have done the market analysis, we understand this is a community in which we want to work and we can work. We look at those development visions and we say, can we work within this? There's only been 2 municipalities we've ever said no, and that was just because they were smaller and they couldn't fit the product that we focus on. But the third pillar is we look at elected officials. Now, that's really important, because some people will tell you, we want development. And then you go, but you haven't voted anything past council in the last 3 years or ever since you've been in. So we used to attend council meetings, see in person, because again, from a military parlance, time in recce is seldom wasted. So you actually see them in council, understand what they're saying, get an understanding of their personality and who gets along with who. With current technology and since COVID, everything's online. So you can have an ability to look at previous council meetings, watch the video, or drill into, okay, I only want to watch 15 minutes when they talk about this development and how they're moving it forward. Get in there, see it. Again, understand who's voting for what and how it looks. The other thing, too, which we've just started to do with AI is feed in council meeting minutes from the last 12 to 18 months and say, give me a dynamic view of how these elected officials vote. And so if you understand how the elected officials vote, you understand, does the product that I produce, is it actually going to make it through council? Because, and I'll use this example because it summarizes everything perfectly. I met a gentleman named from San Diego. He said, 12 years ago, I bought the most beautiful, picturesque piece of land overlooking this amazing vista and the water. However, at no time have I ever been able to get that through council because of all these things. And I said, you've spent 12 years with all the carrying costs, the opportunity costs of that, and you had no understanding that you could have actually achieved that when you first bought it. He said, yes. I said, knowing then what you know now, would you have ever bought it? And he said, no, I wouldn't have. So that's where we start to really, once we understand our elected officials and how they vote on the development that we are interested in, do we want to work here? Yes or no? And then if we actually determine it to be a yes, we go to that next piece, which is we actually talk to the staff. And a lot of your builders will know this inherently. They'll go walk into a planning or an inspection department in any municipality, and they'll say, oh, I've been trying to get my building permit through here for the last, 18 months. The staff, every time I come in, it's 3 weeks for this, 3 weeks for that. And you just Rolodex the time and they really get frustrated. So a lot of the individuals that watch this podcast will know exactly what I'm talking about. But we focus on the staff and we say, we've spoken to your elected officials and we've said we think our product can go here, here, and here based on zoning. They've told us yes. We've verified it through our other means. What do you think? And those are when you have $1 million conversations because you'll understand, are the planning staff or the inspection staff, are they responsive? Do they get back to you? Or is it 3 weeks later? Well, if it's 3 weeks later, right now, when we haven't even submitted an application, I can only imagine what it's going to be like when we actually have an application in. But if there are some municipalities that they'll get back to you, you sit down with them, it's a very collaborative engagement. And with that, we get the understanding that we can work with them. They've told us, yes, you can put your product here and here based on zoning. Over here, just so you know, there's like 100-year-old infrastructure. You're going to probably spend a couple $100,000 upgrading sewer, water, storm drain, or repairing roads. Oof. Maybe that is not something we have in our pro forma that we can think about, or maybe that changes the dynamic completely. Or they could say, and this last spot you're in, just be aware there's some really interesting parking bylaws or some things that you haven't actually incorporated in your plan that you need to think about because this will impact you. Those are $1 million conversations, but you don't get that in every municipality because the function of personality is there. So we go through those 4 stages. And at the end of it, we can say, can we work here? Yes or no? And I can show in Victoria, BC, which is on Vancouver Island, just across the water. There's a capital region there that has 13 municipalities. We've done all that research and we know we will never work in 9 of those municipalities for the reasons I've just said. They've X'd off in somewhere, but there are 4 that we can, and we've been very successful. And so when we go to our commercial brokers and say, we have a requirement for a buy box in this municipality, and we're looking for an end lot, 25 to 35,000 square feet, lot assembly, amenities that look like this in a 3-block radius, zoning that can take us to 4 to 6 story stick frame, etc. They're super happy because they get very detailed buy box. But then when they bring us a deal, we know we can act on it right away because it's a spot that we want. So again, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of work, but it's upfront work before you spend millions of dollars buying that lot, only to find out 12 years later that you could never have purchased there. There's a lot of stomach acid and anxiety and and stress that we avoid at the
Hmm.
front end with a little time, effort, and some money spent on coffees just to say hi. Can
Yeah.
we do this? Anyways, Derek, I
Mhm.
apologize. A little long-winded there, but that's what we do.
Oh, that was fantastic. You really had, laid out all the steps there and wealth of knowledge. Can tell that you've been through this process many, many times before. And the overall picture of what I gathered and something I've learned over my career is really taking the time to plan things out, talking with all the people involved, making sure everyone's aligned, spending extra time there. Forget who said it exactly, but an extra, it's easy like an 80/20 or 10/90 rule of, spend, that 5-10% of time that you're going to spend planning is going to change, like provide so much additional benefit to when you actually go into the process of trying to procure land or build or whatever else. It's true for building a house as well as a development. If everything's planned out, you've got schedules, the people, everyone's on the same page, you've talked, things through, and you've got a solid blueprint. 90% of your work's kind of done already, and you just got to follow
100%.
follow the plan. And of course, things will come out at you from left field, but you adjust and deal with those when they come up. Now, to get onto like an actual project that you guys have done, you mentioned the Ludec affordable housing project, which has a 20% mix of affordable housing and 80% market. Can you tell us a bit more about that project and how
Yeah.
that came about and why that split, mattered?
Again, we're a bunch of ex-Army guys. So I jokingly used to say our whole careers was blowing stuff up and destroying things in support of Canada's defense and Canadians both here domestically and abroad. Now that we've left the military, our support to Canadians and Canada hasn't changed. It's just how we do it is different. And how we do it is building communities, building houses for future generations, which is no different than your American network. It's the same thing. How do we do that really, really well? And like all good Army guys, we sat around on a Friday afternoon with pizza and a few beer and said, how do we solve this affordable housing situation? And it's a North American problem. And we looked at an affordable housing model and and I use the term project because I can say that out loud and it has a very strong negative connotation, right? That was, prevalent in the US, and project developments are not considered very viable, but they aren't considered viable because the whole project isn't financially sustainable. If everybody's paying affordable rental rates, most times out of 10, those affordable housing providers barely have enough revenue to cover operating costs, let alone those key bits on a development like a new roof in 25 years or an elevator in 15. So their reserve pools never get filled and they're always cap in hand. So that was kind of a thought we had. So about 18 months ago, my partners and I were sitting around, like I said, having a pizza and a beer on a Friday saying, how could we do this better? And we started to mess around, and one of my partners had read some literature about mixed income opportunities. Though we'd seen a lot of literature about it, we'd never seen anything actioned on it. And we then started using our pro forma and playing around with the model. If you had 50% affordable, 50% market building, what would those rental stacks look like? Could it be financially sustainable? And what we benchmarked on was 20% affordable, 80% market rental rate. And so what you create is a building where there's no red door, blue door. There's no affordable unit that's of this level and standard and a market unit that's of this level and standard. The whole building's the same. It's a rental building. And we then had to say, all right, is that financially sustainable? Because if it's not, as we all know, if the pro forma doesn't work, then we could just stop right there. So the pro forma worked. The returns were very, very viable. They just weren't the returns you'd get in a full market building. So a little bit of reduction of NOI, a little bit of reduction in the evaluation, but we make our operating expenses every year. We have enough for the reserve pools, and there's a good return for an investor. It's just not that 20+%. It's maybe 12 to 15%, which again is for somebody who's trying to make a social impact is incredibly viable. So the other thing we recognized is there are certain things as developers are good at. We're good at coordinating. We're good at collaborating, but we're not good at providing affordable housing. We need a partner to come in for that. So we looked around in our community, and actually it took a while, but we built relationships with Habitat for Humanity as well as a regional affordable housing provider. So when we had those two individuals organizations at the table with us as strategic partners, we're not just one and one and one is three. We're like one and one and one is 75 because our strengths overcome their weaknesses. Their strengths overcome ours. So we're stronger as a group than we were as an individual. Then we got the municipality involved. We got the land at the assessed value and not the market value. So there was a contribution in kind there. We got fast tracked on some of the approvals and some reduction in some of the fees. So it was a really dynamic, creative opportunity to sit down and say, listen, you have this problem. We're looking to solve this problem. What can we all contribute to make this happen? So the concept then is a financially sustainable mixed income building, but it's not a handout, it's a hand up. So again, there's no red door, blue door. So at the end of the day, somebody who's in the building and is paying an affordable housing rental rate doesn't feel like they're disadvantaged or have the perception of, oh, I live in that building. They're just another resident. And they have the intangible benefit of that benefit of basically not being stigmatized. That's what I'm trying to say. Not being stigmatized by somebody who's in we're trying to make you go to the next level and get yourself in and your family in that situation where you feel proud of who you are and what you're doing. And that's part of that hand up, not handout. So that's what's exciting for us in Leduc. And that's kind of the piece we're operating on. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Great to hear. Bringing, both making sure the economics of a project work, but still having that social impact as well, and having a unique approach, bringing the right people together, on multiple sides there to produce this, solution essentially to an issue, like you said, with, maybe the standard model of a project or affordable housing area with the mix. So that's fantastic. You mentioned a number of times about the economics of a project, and then that's a huge part. And you need a certain amount of capital and people that are willing to invest or have the means of funding these projects. You mentioned as well that's been a challenging part to some degree of getting developments funded. How can you speak to that of how, like, what you've sort of learned or how you approach raising capital for these projects?
Yeah, no, that's a really incredibly important aspect of anything. And we've talked how we choose municipalities, how we choose land. So we do a really great job of that. But that's maybe where we have collectively amongst our partners a bit of a weakness because we're a bunch of army guys that plan, coordinate, strategically execute. But some of those bits of pieces that capital raise involves is really difficult for us because it's not something that's in our wheelhouse. So we didn't really train for that when we were serving. So and here, when we look back over our shoulder of the last kind of 2.5 years, 2023, when whether you're in US or Canada, interest rates were going through the roof and all this capital pulled back because economic uncertainty. Then the first half of 24, that's been really difficult for everybody because again, are we going up? We're going down. What happened in sort of late August, September of 24 is Canadian government started to lower our interest rates. I know in the US, it's been a little bit more delayed and a little bit more subdued in those interest rate reductions. But what we're seeing now is some capital coming back. So we've got all these great projects and it's just been hard to raise capital. You just have to get really dynamic and go to do things that, whatever it takes. And I don't want to say it, whatever it takes, that's maybe the wrong way to go, but think dynamically. But again, we have some great projects, but we just can't execute on some of them because we just don't have the capital to do it. So it's always, important to have those capital reserves ready to go before you execute. And that's kind of one of our major takeaways. And what I predict for 25 and into 26 is there's a lot more money that will be coming back into the market that will be looking for these opportunities because right now, and I think it's the same in the US, it's the whole Warren Buffett mindset. Be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. And right now, the sentiment, specifically in Canada, again, I don't suspect it's too much different in the US. There's a lot of fear right now is, oh my God, this is, what's happening. However, if you are constructing over the next 18 months, when that project is ready for occupancy, we're going to be in a completely different economic scenario. And I suspect a very, very, very positive one in the next 18 to 24 months. So that's kind of what we're telling our clients. And it's starting to resonate because Warren Buffett made billions and billions of dollars doing that very same thing.
Yeah, definitely great point to point out there that things have been a little bit tumultuous and up and down, and yeah, capital's been a bit restrained. It feels like things are starting to take a shift a bit, and people are a bit more optimistic, but we'll see how long that takes. But essentially, it's the pendulum swing, and it's goes down and it's going to bounce back. And if you can invest while everyone else is maybe a little hesitant, you'll reap the rewards for sure when things start to rocket up again in the future. And appreciate you sharing about, capital has been a constraint for you. There's always seems there's always something, right? It's either the people or the project or capital, cash flow, money, investment, whatever. And getting all those leveled off is a rare occurrence when everything's operating at peak efficiency. But a good thing that you mentioned with having that capital or keeping a constant eye on having those type of capital available for when the right project comes along or things clear up and stuff like that. And for me, from a business sense, I think of that as marketing, where you always want to keep that strong, and no matter where, if you're busy or not busy, you always want to have that steady flow of whether it's leads or capital of for to keep the business moving. Can you share with us how, if, let's say I've got a lot of clients and our audience, a lot of general contractors out there, maybe they've been building for years, they want to start building their own houses or get their own small development, maybe subdivide some land or something like that. What would be your advice for someone wanting to maybe make that transition?
The transition, so obviously people would be coming in with a tremendous amount of experience, and it's the hardest part is I'll talk like it's a car. Some people understand the first and second gear of their car incredibly well, but going to that third gear takes different skill sets than what got you through first and second gear. So if you're a single family home builder and you do a dozen a year, which is an incredible systemization, because think about how much it takes to get 12 a year up and running your crews, running your systems, your suppliers, sequencing. If you then start to say, okay, I'm going to do a 30, 40 unit multifamily development, you could think it automatically, I can go and do that, but it takes a different mindset. And we've had experience where we actually were supporting a single family home builder transition to multifamily, and they couldn't do it because they were still trying to do everything themselves. So I need to be on site to hammer nails. No, you need to be on site to coordinate trades, figure out the timeline, not just focus on today, focus on next week and 4 weeks out. Because again, you need to look over your shoulder and know that today is being done, or have somebody to support you there. But you're now sequencing, understanding, providing that adjust in the budget and the timeline. So it's really, when I say all that, there's a couple things. First off, get a mentor that knows to the next level, and take them out for a coffee. Guys that are in the industry for a number of years, they can look around and go, yeah, you know what? I know a couple guys. Take them out for a coffee or a beer, sit down and say, this is what I'm looking to do. What do you think? And then just listen. Don't just listen to one, listen to a whole bunch. And then, if you have partners, what are the new skill sets we need? Just think through the problem. It's almost like you were looking to build a house for the very first time. A contractor or a builder can walk on site. And I used to do this all the time in the military. You can walk on site, look left and right, and in 5 seconds know if it's going perfectly according to plan or it's an absolute gong show. Like, mm-hmm. And every person that's listening right now goes, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So what you need to do is get that mentorship to say, how do I go to the next level? Am I prepared? What are the skills I need? And can I actually achieve that? So can I actually pull myself away from hammering in every damn nail? That's what I've done. There's hammering nails. It's like, again, changing gears on your car. But once you can get to it and get into that next gear, you can accelerate so much faster forward. So as it pertains to, subdivisions, I don't know about that. That's pretty dynamic. But ultimately, if you're a single family, what about a duplex? What about a fourplex? What about an eightplex? Understanding how to sequence at that next level, and then kind of getting that mentorship to go. So again, I apologize. I probably didn't do a good job of that, Derek, because I was scrambling to think about all the things, but talk to some people. Really the people that you respect in your industry, and then maybe go to the highest level and say, I'm a single family home builder and I'm going to go talk to the largest developer in my region. They love to sit down because they love talking about this stuff and just
Mm.
ask them some great questions.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, they say no, and you have
Mhm.
to have coffee with somebody else. So
Yeah, definitely. No, most, business owners, professionals are very happy to meet with people interested in learning and support, people. And like you said, some may not, maybe they're too busy or whatever, but typically you find the people if you look for it who will be more than happy to give you their, insights or background and some advice and things like that. And it reminds me of the who, not how, as builders, guys, whatever, like there's a problem, how do we solve it, how do we fix it, how do we learn this new thing? But often it's more of a who problem of like, who do I need to talk to, who do I need to learn from, who do I need to get around me, what's the team that I need to bring in. I think with typically any new venture or leveling up, a company doing new things, before you're dealing a lot with clients and maybe a municipality or whatever, but now it's going to be, realtors and maybe investors, and there's going to be like new levels of leadership essentially too, with even just scaling up a business, going from being on the tools, hammering all the nails, to managing maybe your crew, your site guys, to managing managers if you got project managers. So you're kind of leveling up in your leadership ability, and that's
100%.
often kind of a ceiling to break through to get to that next level as well. That can be expected with anything new. But fantastic advice. Definitely reach out to the people around you, especially if you know other businesses that you look up to or respect. Reach out to them, ask them for a coffee, and see where it goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, right on. Well, thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate your service in defense and security of the country and your military background there, as well as coming on here, sharing all your insights as with the Great Crown Development Services. What's the best way for people to get in touch with your development company or yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is via LinkedIn, Chris Lunney, and the last name is Lunney. And my phone number is, I'll probably be in the show notes, so we can
Yeah.
put that down there for you.
Definitely. Yeah, we will put some links and things in the description of the video, audio, wherever you're listening or watching to this. So go click through there, learn some more about Great Crown Developments, and can reach out to Chris on LinkedIn there if you've got any questions or want to connect with him. Thanks so much for coming on today, Chris. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. Any last words of wisdom or thoughts that you wanted to share?
No, I'm really excited to have added a little bit of value to your network, and I hope if anybody's interested, looking forward to having a virtual coffee with them in the future if they want to chat.